by the time I had graduated, I graduated last in my class. I really didn't have no option, so I had a connect, and I started going back and forth to New York getting some coke. And not even 2 years out of high school, I wound up getting busted on the way back down on a Greyhound. And I ain't have a record. I mean, a lot of people didn't know I was hustling, but the amount of dope I had, I knew I was facing some time. So in March of '96, I was sentenced and ended up doing 42 months in the federal system. And so the first couple of days I got there, it was just like a nightmare because I couldn't believe that I had got myself, so deep off the ladder that I found myself in prison. I never dreamt that for myself in my wildest dream. Never thought I'd be, go to prison. And so while I was incarcerated, it was my processing chamber. I had to learn, how it was all about respect. So you had to be respectful, or you can get yourself, hurt. And so one of my first jobs, I worked in the kitchen, and there was a guy there named Cornelius Blackwell, and I think he had about 15 years, and he had been down like 7 or 8 years, and he was a phenomenal baker. I was behind the fence at Butler. He was a phenomenal baker, and I bumped into him. I introduced myself, just small talk, but he was so good at what he did. Anytime we would have a bad meal, he would make a dessert, and everybody would flood the chow hall just for his desserts. And so time went on, and I got familiar, adjusted with the prison life and stuff like that. And I went to one of my team meetings, and my counselor said, if you stay out of trouble, when your level drop, we'll send you to a camp. And he said, what camp you want to go to? I said, I want to go to Butler camp. I just want to stay in Butler because I'm from Durham, and my family could just, come right down the street to see me. And so they put in the designation papers for Butler, but when the designation papers came back, it had Seymour Johnson, and that's in Goldsboro. And I was upset because I didn't want to go to Seymour Johnson, and so they said, we could put a detainer on you and keep you here, or either we can send you to Seymour. So I said, well, just send me to Seymour. So they sent me to Seymour. I went through transit, and they sent me to Seymour. By the time I got there, one of the first persons I saw when I got off the bus was Blackwell. I didn't even know he had left Butler. We had 1,500 inmates on the compound, so you can get lost in the shuffle. And so when I got there, I said, Blackwell, you think you can get me a job in the bakery? He said, yeah, I get you a job in the bakery. Mind you, I didn't get in the bakery because I wanted to learn how to bake. I got in the bakery because I knew if I could get my hands on some sandwiches, fruits, vegetables, anything in the kitchen, I could hustle it on the compound and support myself. So that was my main goal for getting in there. And so I got acquainted with a couple guys on the compound, and we got real tight, and we said, we exchanged numbers. We said we was gonna catch up when we got out. And so as time went on, Blackwell taught me how to bake cookies, cakes, pies, bread, cheesecakes, everything from scratch, everything. And one day he told me, he said, hey man, I'm teaching you this trade, and if all fails, when you go home, you'll have a trade to fall back on. Immediately I told him, I said, man, I ain't baking nothing when I get home. And so, I kind of took a liking to it, but I never saw it as a profession. But then one day he baked a carrot cake, and it was so good that they had to lock it up from the bakers itself because we kept eating every pan after pan after pan. And so I wrote that recipe down. I said, you know what, I'm gonna try this one when I get home. And so I had a job lined up. I came home, didn't bake for 2 years, didn't think about baking, nothing. And so time went on, I started working, then we had potluck dinners at my job. And so I told my cousin, the one she was talking about, Kenny, I said, look, I think I'm gonna try this carrot cake. And he was like, man, yeah, let me see what kind of skills you got. So I had a hand mixer, one small bunt pan, and I went and bought. I pulled out this recipe. I went and bought everything on the list, and I shredded the carrots. I measured out all the ingredients, put it in there. I blended it up, baked it on 45 minutes to an hour. Pulled it out. It looked done to me. It looked very nice, and so I made some homemade cream cheese icing the way I would like it. And so I iced it up the next day. I took it to work. And to my amazement, everybody at the company went crazy over the cake. They ate the cake up in like 15 minutes. And so a lot of my coworkers started asking me, you know, hey, you wanna how much you charge me to bake a cake? And I was like, just give me the money for the ingredients, and I'll bake you a cake. And so every time we would have a potluck dinner, they would ask me to bake the cakes. And so, you know, I started getting a little orders from my coworkers, and then I had got back in contact with some friends of mine that was at Seymour Johnson, and so I started hanging back out with them, and you know, they was hustling, and they was hustling at an all-time high. This was 2001, mind you, I was still on probation, and everything changed June 5th, 2001. My best friend, I started back hustling, and I started fronting him some work. And he called me, and it was about 8 o'clock in the morning. He said, Keijuane, I'm finished. I'm gonna pay you. And so I went and picked him up, and I drove him probably, we drove to a place called Campus Hill, and he was on the phone with a guy. He said, hey, I'm not coming to Burger King. From Campus Hill to Burger King is probably from here to that building right there, what you say. And so I said, what you want me to do? He said, stay right here. I'm going to get in the car with him, and I'm going to go down to Burger King, and I'm going to come back because I got to see him. I said, all right. And so he drove down there with the guy, and I waited, and I called him. He said, man, I'm going to come back up there because something just don't feel right. And so I said, well, come on. And so he ain't never come, so I called his phone again. It just rung and rung and rung. I drove down to Burger King. The feds had both of them down. It was probably about 20, 30 cars of feds. And so I went and hired him the best lawyer back then in the city and gave him $10,000 to represent him. He did research on the case, and he said they didn't know my friend John from nobody. They didn't know who he was. He wasn't on the radar or nothing. He was in the car with a guy who was selling guns to the feds, and they needed a drug buy to lock the case in, pin it up. And so my friend wound up getting 21 and a half years in the feds. And the dude he was with got 31 and a half. From then, I was the last person my best friend was with. And so he told me, he said, you know, he said, I got this, I'm loyal to you, I'm your friend. He said, do something.